Although Max Verstappen is no longer in contention for the championship this season, the four-time world champion continues to be a fundamental piece in the landscape of the 2025 Formula One season. Even with a 97-point disadvantage to Oscar Piastri and only 10 races remaining, the Dutch Red Bull driver has discovered a new purpose: to become the great destabilizer in the title battle between the McLaren competitors. Johnny Herbert, a three-time race winner and currently a recognized analyst in the paddock, presented a perspective that could revolutionize our view of what is still to come this season. As the Briton observed, Verstappen has lost his chances of winning the title, but holds in his hand something potentially more impactful: control over who will emerge as the next world champion between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. This dynamic represents a much greater threat to McLaren than any internal tension. Red Bull's scenario has undergone significant transformations in recent weeks. Verstappen, previously known for his absolute domination on race weekends, now faces a completely different reality. It's 4 consecutive races without reaching the podium for someone accustomed to winning practically every competition he participated in. For a competitor who accumulated 4 consecutive world titles, remaining away from the podiums for so long represents almost a public humiliation. However, here lies the point that Herbert understood with exactitude. A wounded Max Verstappen without title possibilities can prove to be much more unpredictable and threatening than a dominant Max. The former driver was categorical when questioned about Verstappen's real chances of winning the title. Regarding the championship, absolutely none. Nevertheless, he will constantly remain at the center of the confusion, will create difficulties for other competitors, and will exert significant influence by subtracting points from the main candidates. Herbert added something that should cause insomnia at McLaren. Max will certainly love this situation too, persisting in demonstrating that he still remains present, that he continues to be relevant. Herbert's perspective exposes a dimension of Formula One that few commentators risk mentioning explicitly: the devastating potential of a wounded champion. Verstappen does not represent just any driver who calmly accepts a secondary position. He is a 4-time world champion at the peak of his technical capacity at only 27 years of age, accustomed to occupying the center of attention since 2021. Observing other competitors disputing what he considers his natural territory must generate a frustration that only those who have already been champions can truly comprehend. Herbert addressed a fundamental question that few are noticing. When Verstappen cannot win the championship, he transforms into a completely unpredictable element. He no longer needs to calculate risks considering points for the title. He can invest with total intensity in each overtaking, can bet on more aggressive strategies, can convert any race into complete chaos. And this radically alters the dynamics of the dispute between Norris and Piastri. Visualize the situation. You are Lando Norris or Oscar Piastri. You are competing for your first world title. Each point has inestimable value, and suddenly, Max Verstappen appears in your rearview mirror. He doesn't need these points for anything. He can risk an insane maneuver that might fail without serious consequences for him. But for you, who is fighting for the championship, any mistake can cost you the title of your dreams. It represents a brutal psychological pressure that Herbert identifies with precision. McLaren, which appeared to have discovered the perfect formula with 2 young, fast drivers apparently without major internal conflicts, now needs to manage a variable that escapes their control. Every time Verstappen appears between the 2 McLarens on the grid, every time he manages to insert himself in the middle of the fight for victories, he will force strategic decisions that might favor one McLaren driver to the detriment of the other. Andrea Stella and his team recognize that they cannot control Verstappen's actions, but they need to be prepared for all possibilities. Herbert advanced even further in his analysis, addressing the possibility of an internal implosion at McLaren. Although he considers this unlikely, the 3-time race winner understands that the pressure of a title dispute between teammates can lead to extreme situations. Formula One history is replete with examples of partnerships that crumbled under title pressure. Senna and Prost at McLaren, Hamilton and Rosberg at Mercedes, Vettel and Webber at Red Bull. And with Verstappen always present, prepared to capitalize on any error or internal conflict, McLaren's margin for error diminishes considerably. The psychological aspect of this situation is simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. Norris and Piastri know they are disputing the first world title of their careers, something that can completely define the future of both in Formula One. But now they need to accomplish this with Verstappen, a four-time world champion, breathing down their necks, constantly reminding them that he still represents a force to be respected. It's like trying to take a mathematics exam with someone shouting in your ear that you won't succeed. Herbert emphasized that the decisive factor between the two McLaren drivers will be mental, and it is precisely here that Verstappen's presence becomes even more significant. How to maintain calm and rationality when you are disputing your first world title and have one of the greatest champions in the history of the category doing everything to complicate your life. How not to let yourself be dominated by emotion when each overtaking can decide not just a race, but the entire championship? The comparison that Herbert established with other great champions like Lewis Hamilton, Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, and Michael Schumacher was not casual. All these drivers had to learn to manage extreme pressure, with adversaries who did not facilitate absolutely anything, with situations where each point mattered more than everything. Norris and Piastri are facing the same test now, but with the aggravating factor of having Verstappen as the great complicator. The difference is that these historical champions faced this pressure over various seasons. Norris and Piastri need to overcome this school all at once. Red Bull may no longer possess the dominant car of previous seasons, but they still count on the most experienced and mentally resilient driver on the current grid. Laurent Mekies and his team know that, even without title chances, each victory by Verstappen this year is worth gold in terms of morale and preparation for 2026. It represents a demonstration of strength, a clear message to all rivals. Red Bull and Verstappen have not disappeared. They are just reorganizing to return even stronger. What makes this situation even more intriguing is that Verstappen has absolutely nothing to lose at this moment. He can risk everything, can experiment with crazy strategies, can transform each race into an epic battle without worrying about the consequences for the championship. This transforms him into an extremely dangerous opponent for anyone who is still contending for the title. He is the most liberated driver on the grid, the one who can do anything because he doesn't have a world championship at stake. Herbert finalized his analysis with an observation that perfectly summarizes the current moment. It will be just one over the other at the end of the year. But the great question is whether this result will be determined solely by the merits of Norris and Piastri, or if Max Verstappen will have the final word on who will be the next Formula One world champion. The Dutchman has transformed into the great arbiter of this title dispute, and this responsibility must be generating enormous pressure on the shoulders of the two McLaren drivers. The 2025 season may no longer have Verstappen as the protagonist in the title dispute, but it certainly still counts on the Dutchman as the great destabilizer of one of the most balanced and exciting battles in recent years. And perhaps this is exactly how he prefers it, without the pressure of defending a title, but with all the power to decide who will be the next to conquer what he already possesses 4 times. The 4-time champion may have lost the opportunity to become a 5-time champion, but he has gained something even more valuable: the total freedom to provoke whatever chaos he wishes, to be the unpredictable factor that can completely alter the course of a world championship. In the final analysis, Max Verstappen continues to be the most influential driver on the grid, even while not contending for the title.